Hey, everybody. Welcome back to episode 13 of the Ideas and Capital Show with Tyler Casey. Today, we have a really amazing guest, Al Nicoletti, and he is a very unique guest, too. And in what he does, I think it's very niche for the real estate professional and really niche for attorneys in general, which that's what he is a real estate attorney. And he focuses on messy title situations, probate and heirship issues, some of the things that can lead to some of the best deals you'll ever find out there as a real estate investor. So I think this will be really valuable for those of you out there watching. So Al, just in your own words, why don't you tell the audience who you are, how you got started in this, and just kind of give, just let it fly.
Sure. Well, Tyler, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And I always love doing these appearances because it helps provide value to you, your audience, and everybody. So for those that don't know, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and my primary niche is probate and curative title work, where we help solve problems and issues when investors and realtors and real estate professionals come across deals where people have properties where their parents died, or there's somebody that owned the property and died, and now we got to come in and clean up the inheritance side. Or maybe there's title issues where an investor can't close because deeds were wrong or things are messed up, and we need to come in and help clean it up. So our role on our end is to help clean up a lot of the title issues. We do this throughout the entire state of Florida. The biggest thing that we help a lot of investors do is that we will wait until the closing to get paid. So it helps a lot of investors when they get these things to go, wait a second, okay, well, wait, we really need that because this is what they offer. And how I got started in this was a journey, Tyler. I remember back when I was in Miami working, and I was doing pre-foreclosures, foreclosure defense, and like straight out of law school. And when you do foreclosure defense, you kind of find that there's a little bit of a mixture with some probates involved because somebody owned the property, they can't pay, they forgot to pay, they're dead. So there was a little mix of probate involved with the pre-foreclosures. And it got my feet wet a little bit, but that wasn't where it was a deep dive in the pool, right? It wasn't until my best friend from law school came down and we were talking about a lot of different things going on in law. And I remember he talked about the probate niche, and I was thinking, wow, this is so interesting. And, at the time when I did a big deep dive in all of this stuff in the probate niche, I saw that there was this massive potential where so many properties at any given time were just sitting around titled in somebody's name that died, and people were just not doing anything about it. Like, I'm talking 70 to 80% of the properties we would see where it would be titled in somebody's name that died were never probated, were never gone through probate. And I think at that point the light bulb went off, because a lot of people never go through probate because they have to pay up front. They don't know how to solve it. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. A lot of different factors. So as I kind of got my feet wet, I really took the plunge. And when I went into this, I saw like how vast this opportunity was. Started going around, meeting a bunch of different people. And then, of course, you can only do so much marketing. You need to actually show the results. And when I started taking on some of these cases and I was getting them done pre-COVID, when I was getting them done in a matter of a week, maybe a couple days, maybe of 2 weeks, people were like, no way, not a chance.
That was before the court systems got gummed up with all the postponed evictions and things like that from COVID, I assume.
Yeah. As soon as COVID hit, I mean, everybody just kind of wasn't allowed in the courthouse at all. So we weren't able to go in. So instead, alternatively, they let us do things, via Zoom and everything. But overall, that's really how it all got started for me, was really getting into getting into the foreclosures, diving in on that end, just going for it.
So a lot of the cities that we operate in, a lot of the properties that you're talking about that are in those situations that are probate or title issues or whatever, people think they can't sell them. So like either they stop paying taxes on them and they go to a tax sale too sometimes, which you could help people avoid, I would assume. And then they also, several of the cities we work in have land banks. And then these properties actually end up in the land banks, but there's still title issues and they can't actually sell them out of the land banks. Have you ever thought of that as like a business strategy for you to like go find land bank properties and talk to these cities and help them get through that to get these off of their books?
No, it's never really ever come to a conversation about that. I mean, I'd have to see what all of that would look like, but I'm sure there's a lot of municipalities and cities that run into this issue all the time where people have messy title and messy deals and all of that. But definitely an interesting niche with that, because land is so interesting in Florida. There's so many opportunities with land where people owned it, they bought it back in the 70s and 80s, they completely forgot about it, and then they died. And now the family's trying to go through the process. And some of these people, they hold on to these properties for 30, 40 years. We just saw our first one where the last deed of record was 1953.
So they don't transact very often.
Well, in that property, it was so old. You know, it was so old. So people hold on to these forever. Yeah.
So how does the homestead thing in Florida come into play with what you do? Does that put, for those of you that don't know, in Florida, people that have like their primary residence can homestead their home. It gives them some property tax reductions and some other protections against debtors and things like that. Does that affect your situation at all when you're trying to manage a probate or a title issue?
So in terms of homestead, in our world of probate, that we look at it in terms of, did the person live and reside there? And if they lived and resided at the property, there's a lot of creditor protections to the family that eventually inherits the property. So if it's a homestead property, meaning they lived and resided there, I'm not even covering the fact that they got the exemption, because getting the exemption is just really good evidence. But if they lived and resided there, most, if not many, creditors are out. The only ones that are not excluded from that include mortgages, security lien, major improvements to the property, taxes, IRS. There's certain creditors that still are going to have an interest on the property. But if it's a homestead, many of the creditors are out, like credit card bills, hospital bills. Like if it's just homestead, it counts as what we call zero, so they can't attach. They can make claims all they want, but they're not going to attach. The issue is what happens when it's not somebody's primary residence, and it's not somebody's primary residence. Then the issue becomes, now it kind of opens up the availability for creditors to try to make claims. But in Florida, we have a 2-year mark. So from the date of death up till 2 years, creditors have a right to make a claim towards the estate. After 2 years, after the date of death is more than 2 years, then all creditors are out. Obviously, major improvements, mortgages, IRS liens, and all that still stick. But no credit card bills, no hospital bills after the 2-year mark.
So in my experience, though, these creditors probably actually like you most of the time because they don't want the property back, right? They would much rather somebody like you come in and a real estate investor like me come in ahead of them having to take some kind of an action and clean up the mess and get it sold to somebody who can do something with it rather than have them having to take it back and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think in terms of creditors, a lot of the creditors just want to be paid back for the bills and services that they're owed. But if they can't make a collection towards it, then they're just going to discharge it and wipe it off their books for everything. The biggest creditors that we do end up seeing, and it happens once in a while, is like the Medicaid liens or the Medicaid creditors, like what we call Agency for Healthcare Administration. Those are the ones where if it's homestead, they can't make the claim. But if it's non-homestead and it's not a primary residence and you got a $200,000 house, and they have a claim and they have a bill for $100,000, they're gonna assert that against the estate. They're gonna try to get their money for it. So I don't know if it's in terms they like me or whatever it is. A lot of our processes and procedures are just so unique. And I always talk to a lot of investors that are not even in Florida, right? They're in all these other states, and every state is going to be different with what they do. Every state's got their own rules or procedures and all of it. But Florida's just so unique and vast, and there's so much opportunity.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's why we're there now. That's why we've opened 2 offices in Central Florida. So you're in Jacksonville area, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So offices or Orlando. So everybody's in that Orlando area.
But you service the whole state of Florida.
Yeah, we service the whole state in Florida.
Yeah, because it was, the way we first met was you spoke at an Ocala Marion County Real Estate Investors Association event, and I peppered you with a bunch of questions about what you do in front of a big group of people that you were speaking in front of.
Hey, it was great. One thing that's so fascinating about going around and speaking at the meetups is, one, you learn a lot about the audience. You learn a lot of different personalities, different questions. You never know what's coming. And I think over time, that's kind of made me and built me, because I know I can take it from all different directions. But it's always great being in these communities because everybody's going through something different, right? All these meetups and RIAs, everybody's got a different background. Everybody's got something going on. And so it's always great to hear the questions. And we'll take the easy questions. We'll take the tough questions. I'm game all day. I'm standing up there. Bring it,
Yeah, so I would imagine doing what you do, you probably don't find yourself in court all that often, but I would think that the ability to speak in front of people and have difficult conversations and confront people with difficult questions is definitely a skill that you need to have as an attorney, even if you're not seeing the courtroom very often.
Oh yeah, there's no time for me to be in the courtroom. Like that's a full-time job, period. Right? That's what I hire people to go to. My realm, I'm like half lawyer, 75% lawyer, 25% marketer, and hitting the road. So you have to be able to recognize your skill set, your genius, and then you need to lean into that, and then you need to go with that, and then all the other stuff that you really want to do but you don't have time to do, you need to hire those people to do, right? And one thing in law school they don't teach you is business. They don't, you go to law school to learn about law and how we got there and where things are at and how things are morphing, but what they didn't teach you is that eventually one day you're going to be in a law firm, you're going to own your own law firm, and you need to know how to go get business. You need to know how to talk to people. Yeah. You need to know how to hold your own. They don't teach that in school, how to do your own books and how to write checks and, do math. And, they don't teach that in law school. So it's always so interesting seeing the real world perspective.
Yeah. Taxes, regulations, licensing, insurance, all the different stuff. I mean, and I've told people many times that early on when I started my company, I could have failed a few times just based on not knowing about that stuff. And there was, in ways, I was lucky to be able to overcome some hurdles of a learning curve from all the things that you do not learn in school. And I think it would maybe be a little different if, your parents were entrepreneurs and business owners and things, and you had some, mine were a teacher and a golf pro, very middle class people. And I didn't know anything when I started a business, and I'd say I about died a couple times from unexpected taxes, unexpected insurance bills, things like that you don't know are coming.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to learn along the way. I think what happened for me too is when back in 21, when I had an opportunity to open up my own practice, I took a leap of faith because I knew that I could bring business in and generate clients and money. But back then, I mean, it was a small operation. It was just me and one assistant, right? There's like little to no overhead. And I was working from home, just got some rent. You just got maybe a couple things. But now we've gone from 2, we have 11 now. So totally different aspect,
you have
right?
11 total employees or 11 attorneys?
No, so 11 employees total. So we got 4 attorneys and we got 7 on staff for, paralegals, well, not paralegal, but assistants and secretaries. And so changes the dynamic of how you handle all the stuff. And, there's mail and we do virtual mail. I mean, nobody's teaching you all this kind of stuff on how to handle it. And then you got different personalities. So it's definitely it is so rewarding and it's so great. But they don't teach you this stuff at school. Like, you got to learn this on your own.
Absolutely. And, I've got 40 people on my team, and kind of every time you level up a little bit and scale up a little bit, I feel like you as a leader have to sort of grow as a person, and you have to shift what it is that you're doing and you're focusing on. And I don't know if you're there, but like for me right now, I would say the marketing and sales and going out and generating new opportunities for the business, setting the culture, setting the vision, setting the expectation, like those things are almost the only things that I do anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really what you got to do. And then you hire for all the other parts of it, right? Because at some point your bandwidth gets full, and your bandwidth, you have to delegate, and you have to know who to delegate to. And then sometimes you got to mix and match and move people around, right? There are certain people that are on your team that have different skill sets, and maybe it's better to plug them into this place and, make them more productive. And, I mean, there's so many different realms we've gone down over the years of fine tuning our process. And, one thing that we do, and I know a lot of teams do their meetings and stuff like every week and team meetings. If we took an hour on a Monday, every Monday, to go over team meetings, we'd be immediately talking about cases, not even like culture or anything. But one thing that we really implement is at the end of the year, I make sure we do like a review, everybody, where they're at, what's going on. And, throughout the year, when things, need to be fixed up or cleaned up, we address them right away. Like, we don't wait for a quarterly review to do it, right? Like, my style is we just address it right away and we move and we tweak. But at the end of the year, we always do a review about how do we make it better? How do we tweak this? What are we going to do? Like, or we'll just set a meeting to say, hey, like, we've noticed like so many voicemails, like so many calls, like, so, how do we tweak this side of the process? And I think by doing that alone, it really helps everybody, because we have an hour and a half meeting. We come away with a game plan, we execute, and we immediately see the results, right? I'm all about execution to the ideas. I'm not just all ideas. Like, I find an idea, we get the plan together, and we're all sold, we're off and running. I think that's what's made us very successful in what we do. And also, I think another thing that's been big too is, and I'm seeing it now, in the beginning, it's one thing to just bring on a new person and then they work for you. But I think the rewarding part of it is when you see somebody that's joined your team that takes an ownership aspect of what they do, and they care, and they lead, and it's great because you know you can depend on this person. You know that things are. I feel like it's a different dynamic that way, and I'm sure you probably seen that too. It's like you can really tell when one of your team members has taken it from it's a job to it's a career to ownership of the role.
So we give each team member between 3 and 7 core responsibilities, depending on their role, and their responsibilities. They're not job duties. It's not like a to-do list. These are the parts of the business that you own and you handle, and nobody should have to check in with you on this, follow up with you on this. You own them, you handle them, and you work towards hitting our numbers that we've set. That's the expectation. And when you get a big team and all the people are operating in that mode and they know what they own and everything's covered by somebody, it gets so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing when you can put the right pieces and the right people in the right rooms. It just makes all the difference. And being able to see where people's strong suits are is a very key aspect of it. 'Cause I think a lot of people focus on what did somebody do wrong? What are they not doing wrong? But you need to be able to see, like, what is this team member doing right? What are they doing right? And where can we make sure we plug them in to be the most productive and most efficient?
Yeah. And I find that what you said, so we do quarterly conversations. You said you do annual and then you do immediate, which we still do immediate corrective stuff if need be, if somebody's messing something up. But I think that they need that routine feedback as a member of your team to grow and evolve and become who you need them to be to stick on your team, right? Like if you're not telling them what they're doing well, like what they're doing adequately and what they need to work on, they don't know. Like I think most people really want to do a good job in general. Like most people don't want to just come in and be shitty at their job. They want to figure out how to add value to their company. And it's kind of your job as their leader to help them get there.
Yeah, it's your job. Yeah, it's true. Like you have to be able to see through to their success on how they can be successful and what they can do to get to that point. And I can think of so many different things over the years that, like you said, like when they level up, you got to level up too. Like there's that aspect of it. It's one thing for them to level up, but then you have to be able to see that too. There's so many different examples we've had in the firm that we've definitely all grown together and we've changed. And one of the biggest challenges too was for 9 years it was just probate, and it was just probate all day. And then I had the opportunity last August, hired my first attorney. She joined me. And we started doing all this stuff with curative, like the curative title work, all the quiet titles and all that. And, for me, that was a little uncomfortable, not in the sense that we didn't want to do it, but new processes, new types of ways of dealing with people, new messaging, new conversations, new communication. It's different because I had it down. I know exactly what to say every single time. And when you introduce these new things, it's tough. It's a learning curve. So when I had Riley join me in August, it was fantastic because we're opening up a new faucet, but you open up a new door of new conversations. And then all of a sudden in January, I brought on my business partner. We've been together on different projects and stuff, but brought him on, and he brought another attorney and he brought staff. So all of a sudden we went from 3 of us to 11 of us. And in that change of, we do all this, we do different things. You have to learn the messaging and learn the tweaking and learn the nuances, because getting business isn't hard. If you try, you follow up, you're consistent, you produce results, you know how to market. Like getting business isn't hard. You're credible. You mean what you say what you're going to do. That, I mean, over time, you show the results, you get the business. But it's also making sure that you can teach your team and understand how that process flows in to make sure it keeps going and it's a mill. I mean, you can only do so much on one front. You have to make sure it's not just the front, it's throughout. And it was a big challenge I would say I was exhausted after 4 months. I remember in April, I felt so much better because I was like, finally, I feel like the train is starting to get on the track and we're moving, right? It's going, but it takes a while for things to get going. And like you said, like you went through your different ups and downs with starting a business, and I almost felt like I was starting a business over again, honestly. Felt like I was starting all over again. But I wasn't, because I learned from what I did in the first phase. This is phase 2. And you just gotta roll with the punches. You gotta, it's a fascinating thing running a business. I'm blessed to do it, and I'm sure you're blessed as well for running a business. You just got to learn how to do it and get your feet wet and just roll.
I love it, man. But you go through seasons where it feels damn near impossible too. I mean, you just, like you're talking about the scaling, and you did it, sounds like very quickly, like in a 6-month period of time, you went from a couple of people to 11 people. And I've scaled similarly fast at different seasons of my business over the years, and getting that stuff all integrated and reworking all your systems and processes. I mean, that's a constant. That is every time you try to level up, every time you try to add more volume, that's going to happen again. I mean, it's just so what do you feel like has been the most challenging thing in scaling your business from a one-man show to an 11-person organization?
I'd probably say the most challenging thing is that, anything that used to was coming in was really just all me, right? Because I handle all the files that came in on probates and all that. And I think the challenging part is, now that you have other team members, you have other attorneys, the other attorneys have their own cases too. And it's kind of getting to the point of having everybody realize that we have a whole team behind us. People would just come to me for every single thing. Like, people are assigned to their roles. And so it was a big challenge of the scaling of, it's not all just me, it's everybody that we have, and we have different pods. And I think that what we had to do was, anytime we'd have a new client or a new investor or somebody that was bringing in volume or doing stuff, we'd always have a conversation about, and I think I've just been proactive now about this, but like, hey, if you're going to work with us, you have to know that we have 3 pods. And there's 3 different pods. Pod 1, all of this stuff comes to me. But pod 2 and 3, they deal with different things. And then that way it was very clear that, Al's handling it. It's like, no, we have a team member handling. We have an attorney handling it. So I think it was being able to redirect where the certain assignments of cases went, and being able to make sure that somebody knew that they were assigned to that one attorney or that one team member. And it's been great because we're starting to see it work now. And I think it takes a level of advanced communication, which is something that we see a lot of people lack and not understanding on, like, communication, being proactive with it, right? When you take on your first project, you're not going to be perfect at all. You're going to learn so many different things on that. But from that one project, you're going to apply what you should have done to the second one, what you should have done to the third one, what you should have done to the fourth one. And now we've gotten to the point where, if we have a big situation to go over, we'll schedule it. We'll talk about it. We communicate. We want to explain how we work to better help serve how you work. And then we want to know how that all is going to jive together. That's has been the biggest learning curve of how we can make it work together.
So we kind of got off on a business operations and growth, and got a little bit away from your core, your niche of what you do. But what you do is actually so interesting. I want to kind of get back to it. So and I know there's probably some attorney-client privilege stuff that you can't say and you can't give away details, but I think it'd be really fun to just hear like one or two of the craziest stories that you've ever encountered in these situations that you deal with.
Yeah, we had one, just right off the top of my head. We had a case, this was when I was early on, actually probably about 4 years ago. I remember these two investors had this one deal, and they said, Al, we're ready to go. We're ready to rock and roll in this thing. You just got to have a consult with the lady. So I remember I was at the Hero event at Amelia Island, and I was in the parking lot ready to check into the hotel. And I remember I had a consult with this lady, and we walked through everything. We walked through the whole thing. And, basically what happened, it was like a remote family member owned the property and they died. And when they died, they had no will, they had no surviving spouse, they had one kid ever that died after they did. So we had to do a probate for the one that's on title, and then we had to do a probate for the one that died after. And then that one that died after had no will, no surviving spouse, and had one kid ever, and they died after them. And then this one, the last one, third one, died and had no will, no surviving spouse, and same thing. They had one kid ever. So it was very linear. It was crazy. But the fourth probate, we found out that the lady had a surviving spouse. He had a surviving spouse, and he had 7 kids ever. And I remember at the time going, whoa, okay, that's 8 people. Is everybody on board? Is everybody on the same page? Oh yeah, everybody's ready to go. And so I was like, jotting all my notes down, like ready to go, super excited. Took the folder, I said, perfect. Sent it away, I said, we'll draft it. I remember coming back to the office and preparing everything. I got the orders ready, I got the petitions ready, I got everything ready. And I remember calling the investor saying, I got everything ready. Are we good to go? They said, yes, press the button. So I pressed the button. We filed all of the cases. And I was super excited. And then the next day, they called me back and they said, wait. Did you file the case? Did you file the probate? I was like, yeah, we hit the button yesterday. Like we're in. He said, oh no. And I said, what happened? They said, we just got the wetland report back for the property. And I was like, what do you mean you got the wetland report? They said, well, we just found out that of the property, a quarter of it was deemed a wetland. And that was going to totally kill the whole deal. So I just remember it was so crazy how, we went through all the motion of getting everything together. Everybody was ready to go. We file a case only to be told, be told that, kick it back. Oh, now it's an environmental. And I think it really taught a big lesson for people of like due diligence. Like everybody's so quick to do this and do that. Everybody just like, they hear all these words and they're so concerned about all this. At the end of the day, everybody's got to do their due diligence with their deals. You got to run your title work. You got to run your environmental reports, and you got to run all this. And I remember at the time, I said, well, how big of a deal is this? And they said, well, it's going to cost like $50,000 to remediate the deal or remediate the wetland. And you were going to have to get the Army Corps of Engineers in. They're going to have to, they said they couldn't do it. They didn't want to do it. I just remember thinking, man, like, here you have bushy-tailed, bright-eyed, like ready to go Al over here, and then all this stuff happened. So, moral of the story was just due diligence was a big factor. And we had another deal last year too. Yeah,
Florida's got a lot more due diligence you have to do than a lot of other areas because of all the environmental stuff. Florida's pretty tough on wildlife and wetlands and, all kinds of things, water retention, everything that they require compared to like the other areas we operate in Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas is wild.
Yeah. I even remember I heard a story about maybe a year or two ago of these investors that found this deal, and it was a land deal, and it was a weird shoddy will. It was not like, it was very off kind of thing. And I just remember coming up with the game plan, and they said, all right, we'll let you know, we need to do the bird test. And I was like, the bird test? And I was like, what is the bird test? And they said, well, apparently there's this like blue bird that lives in the area, and they have to do this sound test, and they need to do it for like 2 hours or 3 hours. And if the bird doesn't show up, you're good to go. If the bird does come and does show up, you're toast. And I was like, what? I've never heard of that before. And then we have all these other investors that buy land all the time in all these various counties, whether Port St. Lucie, Lee County, Charlotte County. And I remember an investor told me, they were like, perfect, we're ready to go, ready to do the probate. We just need to do the tortoise test. And I was like, the tortoise test?
The birds
and they said, man, like, the gophers, the there was some kind of other lizard. And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is crazy. Like, everybody's so focused on me doing the probate. Like, can we like make sure that the lizard's not going to come back on the property?
And the turtles are like, they're like $10,000 to have a real company that's certified come remove them. $10,000 a turtle to get them off of your property.
Yeah.
That's wild. So at what point in that transaction process, so like I've got it under contract, I've got a due diligence period built into it, I've got my title work back. What point do we call Al if I assume it's after title, because we wouldn't know there was major title issues if we hadn't done a title search, but where does it fall in the works?
I mean, really, there's a couple things. I mean, where I come into it on probate is you see what's on the deed. If you see that there's a deed and somebody's on the title that died and there's nobody else named, or maybe there's a couple people named, but maybe one of those people died, that's where people usually come get me. But the big thing for investors, because there's a lot of realtors, a lot of people just don't know how it works. The big thing for me is you get a contract with a buyer, and then you bring that contract to the title company. Title company's going to run a report called a title commitment. And in that title commitment, it's going to talk about probate or corrective deeds or anything that needs to be done. And that's where we come into the picture to kind of figure out, like, what are we dealing with here?
Yeah, look at that Schedule B on the title work and see what kind of exceptions the title insurance company is putting on the deal. And then you're the guy that knows how to, whatever paperwork we need to file, whatever people we need to reach out to, how to find them, how to clean that up if there is issues there, correct?
Yeah, we come into it. We basically are like the cleanup crew. We come in to try to see, like, what can we do? What's available? Obviously my ultimate of options that we can do is probate. If we can't do probate, then we move to other things, like what's going on. Is a minor involved? Is a minor involved? Then we have to do what we call a guardianship to try to get that kind of sale approved. And there's a lot of questions that we have to get into, or if we're dealing with a messy title and there's somebody that bought a tax deed or somebody that bought a property but didn't know that back in the 70s and 80s that somebody didn't properly convey out their interest. Do we need to do a quiet title action or some kind of action to silence the title? We're the ones that are doing the messy, the weird, the different, the bizarre, and we're trying to see how we can find a solution to getting it across the finish line. And sometimes they're normally priced, and sometimes it's expensive to do. Another one we've seen, Tyler, is we get probate sometimes where there's 7 probates.
Yeah.
One property.
And if you have like a bunch of people who believe they have an equitable interest in this property or could potentially, you as the buyer may have to pay all those people off or negotiate with the seller to pay all those people off to get them to sign off on your deal too, which is a pain in the butt. But I think I remember from the speech I heard you give that you guys will kind of help with that process. It's obviously more expensive if you're having to get involved with that stuff than just the standard, deal, I would assume. But, but gosh, man, I've done this. I've done hundreds of real estate deals. Some of them are mobile home parks. And I'll tell you, I've had quiet title actions on mobile homes so many times. And it's because the whole title process for that is such a mess. And nobody ever has a title to them half the time. And you're just fighting that. But I would gladly pay you like thousands of dollars in some of these cases to take off of my plate what I've dealt with to get through some of those deals. And I mean, I don't think people understand how complicated it can get and and a couple of them I've ended up just walking away from because I couldn't get somebody on board too. Like one person was a holdout or whatever, but most of them I've encountered, I've been able to just like fight through it and figure it out piece by piece and ask a bunch of people what I need to do next to get to the finish line. But man, I think what you do is super valuable. I mean, to have just a single resource, I can just call Al's company and solve those problems. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're very niche with what we do, but we're very unique with what we do. We're unique in what we are able to offer a lot of the solutions to solving problems. And we think it's a great value add for investors because, there's the title companies, right? And they help do the closings and get a lot of the stuff, wrapped up with the city and liens and searching and stuff like that. But then there's what we do and what we need to get into and the digging we need to get into. And we get into a lot of messy stuff. I mean, I just saw an email today, somebody wrote in the subject line, they wrote complex probate. And I'm thinking, how hard can this be? And then I read it and I was like, what in the world is this? Like, sometimes like you think you've seen like almost everything and then you see something new and you're just like, but then you take your education, you're learning and you go, okay, how do we solve this? How do we get through this? And I think that's the creative side of the law firm that we have that's what we're doing is getting really creative.
And sometimes those challenging ones, though, are the best opportunities, too, especially like if going in on the front end as an investor that, hey, this person doesn't believe that they can sell this property because of some issue. And you as the investor know that most of those things are resolvable. And maybe even I just have a easy button solution in calling Al's law firm and saying, here's the situation. Here's my problem. I can probably negotiate a way better deal on the front end with that seller because they believe it's so challenging that they've given up.
Yeah, you would be mind blown too, Tyler, with the industry that we're in, where so many people and sellers, they inherit property, they own property with other family members or other people on title. And they run into so many situations where they can't get their other family members to agree or do something. And nobody, they're dependent on people to help come in and help them solve those problems, investors, realtors, attorneys, and where can they go? How do they help? And so there's just endless thousands of opportunities with this, like all over the place. And it's not even just homes. It's land, it's vacant land, it's commercially zoned land, it's homes, it's houses, it's townhouses, it's duplexes, it's everything. It's like all over the place. Condos, everything.
And in my experience, most title companies and most attorneys really don't understand a lot of this stuff. And they're not niched into it like you are. And because of that, they're actually not very helpful. Like, title company might tell you need to get this affidavit signed or something simple like that. But like, they're not going to help you with a lot of this stuff. I've experienced it myself where I've put a deal under contract and it goes through title and there's all this stuff on there that is a nightmare. And like I said, most of the time I've been able to just kind of work through it and like, beg people I know to help me know what I need to do next to figure out how to solve the problem. And, but there's been a couple that I've walked away from, and even the ones that I've got done, man, I would much rather have just been able to been like, hey, Al, here's this deal, tell me what I owe you. Let's get this thing done, because it's not fun.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that run into that kind of stuff all the time. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And once they have a resource like us and the law firm, then they feel so relieved. Like, I just talked to a lady today. On the title, there were 4 people, and 3 of them are alive. And the 4th one was her husband that died. And it's a property in Florida, and she lives in either the Carolinas somewhere. And she just told me, like, from the beginning, you could hear the stress. And she was just like, I'm just so dying to get this over with and do this. And when I walked her through this, the whole process, it was really easy. It was just really her. And she was like, wow, I love your style. It's so easy. And I'm like, this doesn't have to be hard. And she told me at the end of the call, she was like, I'm so glad I found you or got connected to you. And she goes, it's a huge weight off my shoulders. And there's people like that all over, everywhere, that deal with this kind of stuff, that need that help.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really valuable solution, and not many people are in that game that you're in, because I've struggled to find them. I wish you were licensed in all my states that I'm doing deals in, because they're the guys that are doing what you're doing they're not easy to find. Well, Al, I feel like this has been really valuable and interesting conversation, and should be, if those out there, all the real estate investors, business people out there in my audience watching this, I'm sure you've got tons of value from Al. And is there anything that you just want to, if there was one thing you could tell the audience, either about your business or about the niche, kind of one last statement, what would it be?
I'd say in terms of business, you're going to have your great days, you're going to have your off days, you're going to have so many days in between. And one thing that you just got to keep doing is pushing forward, and you just learn from different things as you go. And starting a business and being in a business is very rewarding. I just tell people, like, you really just have to make sure you have a strong mindset and keep your head down and grind, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be super rewarding for people.
Have you ever read the book 3 Feet from Gold?
No, but I'm writing that down.
You should go read it, because it basically is a book talking about just that, about how most people quit right before they strike gold. Right. And a lot of times it feels the hardest right before you reach that new plateau and start to catch your stride in business. So I think that's a great message to leave people with today. Al, I really appreciate you coming on. I know your time's valuable. And if anybody out there in Florida is looking for real estate legal help, specifically around probate or title work issues, Al's your guy. Al's my guy for that. Al, again, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Tyler. And I think this is always great that you get to do this as a podcast host and give back to the community. So thank you so much for having me on.
It was fun.